So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new season of our seminar series, running from February to April 2025. We are excited to have you with us as we embark on another round of engaging and impactful discussions. My name is Jeff Tucanes, faculty member of the Department of Economics of Ateneo de Manila University, and I will be your host for this event. Today, we will have about a 40-minute presentation followed by a 20-minute question and answer, providing ample opportunity for in-depth discussion. So just a quick reminder of the house rules. First, please let the speaker finish the presentation before we open the floor for questions. For our Zoom participants, kindly stay muted and keep your video off during the presentation. When we move into the Q&A, simply raise your hand virtually, and once acknowledged, you can unmute and ask your question. Alternatively, you can send your question via the chat box or chat with me directly. Lastly, materials from the seminar will only be shared on our website with the speaker's consent, if any. Today's presentation, titled The Scopus Diaries and the Illogics of Academic Survival, delves into the evolving demands of academia, where scholars must juggle teaching, management, media presence, fundraising, and research. Drawing from the book authored by the speaker, it provides strategic insights on navigating international careers, rankings, and publishing. How do you balance institutional expectations with personal academic goals? Which conferences are worth attending? And how do you secure funding? Is peer reviewing beneficial? And which publishers should you target? This session offers practical guidance on publishing, career planning, and academic survival in an increasingly competitive landscape, helping scholars make informed strategic choices. Our speaker today is Dr. Abel Polese, Senior Research Fellow with the Dublin City University Institute for International Conflict Resolution and Reconstruction. He has been a Marie Curie Fellow at the Technical University of Dresden, Germany, and the University of Edinburgh, Scotland. In 2012-2013, he worked as a policy analyst for the European Commission DG Research. He has been a visiting professor to several universities in America, Europe, and Asia. He is the author of the Scopus Diaries and the Illogics of Academic Survival, which is a reflection on how to navigate academic careers, and regularly writes blog posts on the challenges of academia. Abel is co-editor of Studies of Transition States and Societies, a Scopus indexed open access journal, and is active in debates and initiatives on open science and science excellence with the Global Young Academy, one of the main organizations dealing with science policies across 5 continents. So please join us in welcoming our distinguished speaker with a warm round of applause.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this, for coming here, especially such a short notice. At least it was short. Actually, about the questions, the funny thing is that usually at my presentation, I say if you want to ask questions during the presentation, it's fine, but not to get any confusion, we let the online people ask after the presentation. But if anyone in this room has anything urgent, we can also, I don't mind. And I can start from the 3 things we were discussing before the beginning of the seminar, and focus on what also Jeff was requesting, was kind of a suggestion, because we have 3 things that touch it all. Keeping in mind that usually I do trainings on those things and they can last 2 days, 3 days. So this is an endless topic. And as a friend of mine said, Abel, you can talk like Fidel Castro for like 8 hours with no break. So, but the starting point would be that Jeff wanted to suggest something about fundraising, and then there was a question about publications, and then another one about reviewer too. So, how to divide those things? I can start with fundraising because I think that was the one. I mean, agreed, and then we can move on to the other things. So, fundraising is a very, very kind of not only hot topic, but is also a very kind of sensitive one because fundraising is like every university now wants to fundraise, and every researcher has got the pressure to fundraise. The point is like by nature of the word competitive funding, if funding is competitive, not everybody can access it. So this is like everyone should have competitive funding is a basically a contradiction because you cannot have everyone. Everybody cannot be more handsome than the average. Everybody cannot be more successful than the average. So that's the first thing that should release some pressure on you. I understand it doesn't release pressure from your line manager, but I mean, the sense of guilt that you're not bringing money to the university should be kind of also compensated by the fact that actually it's not materially possible that everybody wins. So I have a blog that I can share later, which is called Reason Why You Should Not Apply for Funding. Now, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, especially by somebody who is bringing money all the time. But my point is, you should do something if you believe you are good and if you enjoy it. If you don't, there are other ways, which is fundraising can also be if I'm submitting a project, I need people in my team. So maybe you don't need to submit your project. You just need to join my team. Or the other way, if you are submitting a project and I don't want to write, but I know, but you know that I'm very good at kind of publishing or at doing some administrative work, I could be part of your team. In that case, we can be kind of joint applicants, or I can be kind of one part of the team. And even if it doesn't count, it doesn't look on your CV as good as you are the principal investigator of a project with 5 millions. We should also acknowledge our limits. Maybe you don't like to fundraise. In that case, you can put your work at disposal of other people. I mean, as I say, Ronaldo, you need one Ronaldo in a team. If you have 11 Ronaldo, they would just fight. They would say, I'm the best. No, I'm the best. You need a goalkeeper. You need defenders. Ronaldo cannot be all those things. So if you have one very good fundraiser in the team and then the rest of the team that is following, that's already enough for the department. Now, if the head of the department doesn't understand this, well, then you need to have an internal discussion. But I think that anyone who needs to lead a team understands that people have different roles. So what you have to do instead of trying just to run with everyone else is to understand what is your role, what could be your role in a team. Another way for not to fundraise is like if you bring in external project or external consultancy to the university, that doesn't count as fundraising, but it's actually fundraising. An example could be that if you organize a large conference and you bring the most excellent speakers, politicians, and then you are on the news, basically that counts as free advertising for the university. So students, they say, I want to study political science, I want to study economics, oh, I'm going to study in that university because you got very good people, and I know that those, oh, this is something that also counts as fundraising. It's not awarded, but it's still, you're still bringing benefits to the university. And that could also be like you are always, I mean, I have one colleague who's always on TV. Whenever there is a kind of international conflict, the TV calls him. So, of course, everybody who wants to study political science in Ireland knows that this person works there. So, if I want to hear, I mean, if I think that he's smart and I think that I want to work with him, then I'm going to go to that university. And students are actually an income to the university. So, that's another way. You could also have, in some cases, you have some very, very unique position in the university. And you bring in, if not money, you bring in benefits another way. So you should not understand fundraising just the art of writing a grant and bringing money there. Now, fundraising also comes in two different ways. I mean, application. I call them competitive and political. Competitive is one when you have a competition which is announced and you say, okay, this is what we're gonna grant 5 grants for this money. Political means that there is some money available, but it is not advertised anywhere, and you will find it. That's also fundraising. I mean, it could be like imagine the embassy of a country. At the end of the year, they have $5,000 left because they didn't spend them. Now, the worst thing that can happen to an embassy, the worst thing that can happen to a public institution is not to spend the money. Because intuitively, it's like, no, if I say money is going to be for next year. No, if you don't spend the money by the end of the budget year, your line manager will say, so you don't need that much money. Next year, we're going to give you less because you didn't spend enough. So actually, this is a paradox of public administration, but if you don't use all the money, they will think that you don't need it. So if my embassy has 5,000 left by the end of the year, I'm very keen to give it to someone, but of course I cannot give it in the street. Your role as a fundraiser is not, you don't even have to write the project. If you identify the people that are doing this, you could just say, okay, I'm organizing a conference. Can you give us some money? And that could be much easier than competitive money. Maybe it's not as much as in other cases, but it brings. I mean, I have personal experience with a couple of times. It was really like ridiculously easy to get money. I mean, I was organizing a conference, and then I just stuck in conversation with one of my colleagues who is the director of the Center for International Cooperation in Brussels. And she was like, oh my God, we have to organize a conference. I don't want to organize a conference. I have money, but I don't want to. I was like, wow, I'm organizing a conference. I have no money. So this marriage has to happen. So we had the conference, and I got 5,000 for free from the university. And we could pay like better meals, and we could pay better kind of hotels and everything. Everybody was happy because we're having the conference in a very, very nice place. And fundraising could simply be the fact of organizing an event in a place which is so interesting that people are gonna just come in. I mean, I'm just thinking of really that conference. I really had big names in international relations coming and begging me to invite them because they had administrative funds. They have kind of departmental funds from the year, and they wanted to go to somewhere nice. And I was organizing the conference in May in the Mediterranean, so by the sea. So you say you didn't bring any monetary value. I didn't, but I brought the best speakers in the region about those things just because they wanted to bring their wife, or because they wanted to come themselves there. For years, we've been having a conference in Croatia, and Nobel Prize speakers, Nobel Prize winners, they were coming. Why? Because the first one came, and after the first one came, all the other Nobel Prizes are, oh, he came, why I cannot be invited? And the conference was on an island, on a Croatian island. Everybody wants to go to a Croatian island. So if you are not, I mean, usually people are very busy, but if you are very busy and I say, do you want to come in May to an island just by the sea and give you a speech? You say, well, that sounds better than being in the winter in a in a isolated place. So this is also, even if it's not traditional fundraising, you are actually saving funds. You are saving money, and you are generating some kind of benefit that are not necessarily monetary. I mean, all this counts. It's not that we all have to win the best money. So this is about what I call political grants. There is always, I mean, and this you cannot find on the internet. You cannot find, nobody will tell you. So what you have to do, I mean, it's a work. If you're a good kind of PR person, you can just go around, you explore. If you are in Manila, you go to the expat community, to the people working with the embassies, to people working with international organizations. And at some point, you will learn about something. Another example, we did a survey on sustainable development goals in Vietnam. And so we won the tender. But actually, we won the tender because it seems that nobody else wanted. I mean, the UN was not able to identify a good contractor. And so they were looking, and nobody wanted. I mean, nobody was available. The money was too low for the main one, for the big ones. So I was working. I still work with an NGO in Vietnam, and I was like, okay, let's go for it. Even if you don't make any money, it's gonna boost your profile. So the NGO was very small, but now they can say yes. But we did a survey I mean, funded by the UN, and it was even mentioned in the UN embassy, I mean, UN assembly in New York. So in that case, the gain was not monetary because we didn't, I mean, we spent all the money for the survey. We did basically for free, but there was a boost for the organization. So that could also be a thing. You bring money to this university, you spend it all, so there is no profit, there's no, but at the same time, you gain visibility. You gain kind of consensus. You gain the fact that the same, I mean, that's the same thing I did with an Irish grant. I was like, I don't care about the money, but I do care that my university is recognized as the leader in the field. So if I get money from the government to do a study, even if I have to spend all the money on the study, then at the national level, we're going to be the main ones. And then the next time there is a bigger grant, we already have a president. We have a track record of doing research in this thing. So this is why in my book I use the word strategy. I mean, because strategy is not about, I mean, it's not getting what you want immediately now. Strategy is about getting what you want at some point, passing through things that are not necessarily uh, kind of intuitive, they're not necessarily profitable. You don't need to win from every transaction. You could also lose from the first transaction, knowing that at some point you will get a kind of a significant boost of your things. In terms of competitive grants, there is something else. There is a fact that competitive grants, there is no database for kind of all grants that are available. And even if I give you now, or I say, oh, this grant is very easy, then everyone here is going to apply for that one. And that one is not going to be easy anymore. So in the portfolio of every fundraiser, in the computer of every fundraiser, there is a database of organizations that you work with, especially because if some grants are working well, you keep on working with them. I mean, there is no need to change. I mean, you don't need to be to be a fundraiser, you don't need to know all the grants in the world. So I have this friend who is considered a good fundraiser just because he was at the right time in the right place. A couple of times he was there. He ended up discovering about those applications the day before, but he was the most important expert on the field. So he just wrote the grant and he got the money. He just didn't do anything much. I mean, anything well. But at the same time, he was just lucky. But luck is a result also of your choices. So it's not, you're not lucky if you just stay home. You're lucky if you go out and you look for luck. So the point would be, as a fundraiser, the first step would be not to write the grant, but first to identify the donor. I mean, you know, there's a joke about this man who was riding a car, and then the car breaks down, and then the mechanician, the technician comes, and he says, "Okay, give me a hammer." He touched the car, and the engine starts again. Say, how much is that? $100. $100, but you work like 1 minute. He said, yeah, 1 minute is $1. But then $99 is to find the place where you should hit. So the most valuable asset you have as a fundraiser is not the fact that you're writing, but the fact that you know where to send your applications. The fact that you know which donors are doing what. And once you identify the donors, then it's more of an orthodox discourse about, okay, just read the guidelines carefully, because it's not just about writing the grant. Another important thing is that it's much better not to win than to win and then to fail the project. Because if you win and fail the project, then the rest of your life is, it's done. I mean, your reputation is gone. So if you understand how the grant works, and if you understand how much you can promise, because everybody wants to promise the moon. So you say, yes, of course, I'm going to cure cancer and I'm going to solve all the wars in the world with this grant. Of course, you're tempted to do this because you know that everyone else is also boosting the things. But you should also be able to boost things that you can deliver, and understand what you can deliver, what you cannot deliver. Because once you have a grant and you promise to solve things for 5 million and the grant is only 500,000, then you're in trouble. And you're much more in trouble than if you didn't win anything. So those are things that you should carefully consider before applying and when you choose a new scheme. Also, if your administration is very, very kind of strict and the grant is also very strict, you're probably going to failure, because it's going to be very difficult to manage the grant. Maybe you won't be able to spend the money simply because of bureaucratic hinders. So check carefully what your administration is able to do and is willing to do and it was not willing to do. Because whenever there is an international grant, they allow you to do many things, but maybe those things are not really allowed in your university. I mean, every university is different. Private university have their constraints. Public university they have their own. Maybe your departmental chair is stricter on some things and is much looser on other things. I mean, every person has pluses and minuses. I mean, there's no need to debate this. But the thing is that try to use the strength of your administration. And about writing, I mean, the only thing I can tell you is, I mean, that you learn to write, just like learning to fly. Birds learn to fly by flying. You learn to writing by writing. There is no other way. When I started, I mean, I was failing every project for a year. So it's not that I started and I was winning. Um, but then I was slowly understanding. I was understanding the process. And also another thing I was doing was to copy, because the first thing you do is to copy. I mean, everybody. I mean, even if you are Picasso, you first thing you copy, and then you add your own style. Of course, copy and plagiarism are different things. Like Steve Jobs, I mean, you remember Steve Jobs saying, yeah, good people kind of take ideas, genius, they steal. But I mean, he was meaning that you need to be able to know what to steal, what is legal to steal, what is not. Because if you copy an application as it is, it's illegal. But if you take the structure of the application, you understand actually what's the meaning behind every paragraph. That's copying, but that's a legal one, because that's the way you do things. When you're learning to write an article, you don't have to copy the content, but you can see the structure. And if you say the structure makes sense, you use the same thing. When you're learning to play a song, when you're learning to draw anything, the first thing you do is just to imitate other things. So if you have any other application from the same scheme or even from others, you can get those ones and try to understand how the discourse was formulated, keeping in mind that every donor has different requirements. So maybe an application that works for one donor, it doesn't work for another one. They're very specific. And the last thing is that academic fundraising is, I mean, I have another blog. I mean, I can share this as well. It's called, I mean, I call it the art of getting there, because there is a difference between kind of competitive public fundraising and kind of private sector fundraising. Private sector fundraising can be constant. You can get the same donor for every year because they like the project. But public fundraising, there is a competition every year. So it goes like this. One year you win for lots of money, and then for 1, 2, 3 years you don't win anything, and then you win again the money. And this is not predictable. And even it's not predictable because it doesn't depend on you. You can write the best application ever, but then the Nobel Prize in your discipline applies and they get the money because they're more, I mean, of course, the donor is going to be happier to get the money to the Nobel Prize. So I call academic fundraising the art of getting there. Getting there means that if you ask me to write a project, I cannot promise you that it's going to win. What I can promise you is that it's going to be good. I can promise you it's going to be solid. It's going to get to 80 or 90 out of 100. I mean, in a European Commission, with the grants I applied for, they usually counted in hundreds. So if you need to win, you need to get, I mean, in some discipline, you need to get 95 out of 100, 96. So I cannot promise you I'll get there, because the reviewers are also individuals. They have their own preferences. They have their own kind of way of doing things. They have their own conflict of interest sometimes. But I can promise you that once you read my application, you're going to be like, okay, it's well written. I see that it's solid. It makes sense. Of course, we didn't win, and maybe we will never win, but because maybe the grant was not really accessible. And the homework about fundraising is also about finding out what's the success percentage of schemes. There are some schemes that paradoxically, they got no applications. I mean, last time, I don't remember which one, but I was looking for a scheme that was giving 5 million euro and there was only one applicant. I mean, you would imagine that everybody wants 5 million euro. But only one. So, of course, that one won. What you need to do is to pass the threshold, of course. And maybe it was very specific. So it was not just that not everybody would apply. I mean, if I mean, of course, if it's a grant in astrophysics and you need a telescope to apply, of course, only university with a telescope can do this. But if it's a grant in social science or economics, and you see that some grants that have a tendency of bringing, I mean, being easier, you could also try that one. Keeping in mind that easier or kind of less crowded depends on the year. Some years they are very crowded, some years they're not, and this is not predictable. Just as an example, the first time the ERC, the European Research Council grant, was announced, there were so few people applied that actually the success rate was so high, was unbelievable. And they were just giving out 1.5 million to 1 million. So by the next year, everybody was like, oh, it's so easy, I'm going to apply. So the following year, everybody applied. And of course, I mean, so the success rate sank to kind of, I don't remember, 2%, 3%, 4%, I don't remember, but it was so ridiculous. And And the funny thing was that, I mean, I believe that even people that had only half proposals, they would apply because they heard it was so easy. They were just taking out of the trash and sending it. So the following year, then the things kind of assessed. I mean, I mean, there was an assessment moment when the people that were not motivated would not apply, and the people that were motivated would apply, but all people motivated would apply. So it became kind of more predictable in terms of success. Um, yeah. Yeah. So about university rankings, it's a bit difficult because in the short term, everybody needs ranking. In the long term, I think we should try to get out of it. So what happens is university ranking, to me, this is the obsession that we have to see who is the best. When they ask you what's the best movie, and it's very, very culturally based because in some countries, in some cultures, it's not like who is the best, but it's about who are the good, who are the not good. To me, science, there is no better science. There is good science, there is not good science. So good science is I have data, I collect data in a way which is kind of scientific. I process data, and I have findings. But not good science is when you don't do this. Now we have this obsession of who are the best. Why? I see at least two reasons. One is that public funding and funding for universities is now limited. So if you, I was giving this example. If you think of when you have only the University of San Tomas in the country, and then the minister will say, "Oh, we should fund the university. Which one? Yeah, I wonder which one. You know which one." Now that you have so many universities, if you want to sponsor a project, if you want, you need to understand where your money is worth going, especially because of this now emphasis on taxpayers, how we're going to spend taxpayers' money, which is somehow legit, but it's sometimes it's kind of too extreme because it's like it's not that everybody can decide where money for astrophysics can go. But there is a requirement for transparency. Why we funding this wing? There should be a way to motivate why we're sending money here and there. So we need rankings to understand that if I'm funding the best department in physics in the country, that's understandable. Of course, the best department in physics doesn't mean that it's the best project, but at least you have an indicator. The second reason why you need ranking, I mean, you don't need, but you need ranking, is that universities, they make money from students. Now imagine, I mean, and rich people, they want to send their students to the best universities. And if they send students to the best universities, chances are that not only they're going to pay the fees, but they can get also some donations. So if you say, we are the best university in the country, and you have some rich businessmen that want to send their kids to that university, they're gonna do this. You have chances not only to I mean, you're gonna have a long life relationship with the family of this person. That if they are happy, they could continue funding. I mean, don't forget that in some countries, I mean, notably the US, Europe is much back is in this respect, but philanthropy also goes through degrees. So it's like you are an alumni of my university, now you're very successful. Would you like to give money to your fellow students from next generations? By doing this, it all comes back into money. So you want to be the best university in the country because if I know that I can attract wealthy businessmen children from this country and from that country, this could be useful. So how we do this? Well, to do this, we need some kind of criteria. And the criteria, they need to be kind of what they claim to be objective. Now, as economists know, and statisticians know, and so on, I mean, numbers could be objective, but the interpretation of numbers or the production of number, they are not. So one of the texts I suggest to everyone is how to lie with statistics, because you can easily lie with statistics. So by doing this, we're having this fetish of having percentages and having criteria that are objective, which is the claim of every public administration. We're going to do things in a way which is fair. Now, this is certainly much better than doing in a way which is subjective, but objectivity is a bit difficult to achieve. So what I usually say is that the claim of a public administration is a claim of objectivity. I mean, the ideal point of a public administration is where anyone sitting there will make the same decision on administrative matters. No, I mean, there is no agency, but this is virtually impossible. So what happens is that those criteria, even if with the best intentions, they do not necessarily get kind of followed up. Second is, once you understand a way to crack the system, do you think you're going to stay honest? I mean, academics, they're not more honest than other people. We are just more cultivated. So the percentage of people that are prone to kind of unethical behavior is the same, not to say even worse. I mean, think about the retraction rate from the best journals. The retraction rate from best journals is higher because you will sell your mother to publish in that journal and to progress in your career. So you will see that the number of the number of studies has been tampered, has been fabricated. I mean, from time to time, you find about studies in medicine, studies in psychology, where there were no interviews, but the data was kind of fabricated so that you could go into that journal, So the thing is, university ranking is, I don't think it's a necessity of science. It's a necessity of public administration. So that in the short run, of course, if you fall from number 1 to number 400, you're going to feel economic consequences. But in terms of science, I'm not sure. So I always give the example like, okay, if you use, I mean, if you want to have, I usually say I train policemen to steal because the best policeman is a policeman who knows how the thieves work. So just to give an example, the meat market in the UK or the paper market. So when you have an exercise every 7 years, 6, 7 years, and then they count the publications and the success of every researcher. There is a practice to hire the best researcher at 5%, so a very low salary, but so they could add the researcher's publication into their national contribution to the national exercise. I mean, this was a few years ago. I don't know. I mean, of course, every time they're trying to limit those things, but the moment they limit this, there will be something else popping up. Citations. If now we all agree that I'm going to cite all of you in my next paper, you're going to cite all of me in my next paper, we're going to increase our personal statistics and our university statistics without changing anything. We're not going to become more handsome. We're not going to become smarter. We're not going to become richer. Well, maybe richer because we get money from the government. But otherwise, no. The same thing. If every of my papers is going to be co-authored by all of you, you increase, I mean, only in this room are going to have 6 papers every year, even I just write 1. And this has become a practice, especially in some disciplines. Of course, in some places, it's easier to define who was the author. But if you are in a lab, how can you prove that this person was not contributing? So I usually joke that even people bringing coffee, they are also co-authors because they were in the lab contributing to the team. And of course, if you are in a lab feeding the worms or feeding the rats, you need somebody who goes there all the time. And of course, somebody who was, I mean, you can either acknowledge the person in the thank you, this person for feeding the rats, or you could also add them to the authorship list, especially if it doesn't change anything. I mean, in the book, in a footnote, I mentioned this. Do you know how many authors had the most co-authored paper in history? How many co-authors could have a paper? Just guess. Give me your best guess. If you really wanted to include many authors in your paper, how many would you put? We need to be very generous. 50? So the number is 10,000. So you have a paper with 10,000 authors. To the point that the journal refused to print a list of co-authors because, of course, every co-author also have 1, 2, 3, 4 affiliations. So 10,000 co-authors with 3, 4 affiliations means that the whole journal is going to be just a list of authors. So they say, we're going to put it online. And then on paper, we're just going to write like Smith et al. Otherwise, it's going to take too much space. So now, can you imagine the impact on your career of such a paper? Of course, it's not a paper in economics. It's not a paper in political, but in social science. But can you imagine if you were a co-author? Every time one of the co-authors cite themselves, it's a citation. So in the very first year, you will get at least 10,000 citations just by doing nothing. If you do this, and now if smart people in economics and in anthropology understand they could do the same thing, they do the same thing. I mean, even if I'm mentioning anthropology because usually a discipline where you are alone or kind of two of you. Economics is a bit bigger because you can have you can have regressions, you can have experiments, you can have models. In that case, you need many people. But anyway, you never get to 10,000. But if you artificially went to 10,000, even in an anthropological paper with 10,000 people, basically each of those people would boost their citations. And this doesn't change anything in terms of science. It boosts your career. But then the thing is, if everybody understands that this is possible and everybody does it, the result is inflation. There is no increase in the value of the product, but there is an increase in nominal value of the product, which is everybody has more citations. We have the salami tactics, like you slice your research into small slides. So I have a case study of 3 Filipino islands. I published one paper with one island, one paper with the second, one paper with the third, one paper with a comparison of first island and second island and third island, first island and third island, and then the 3 islands together. So I'm slicing one research, one paper that could simply be 1 paper, 3 case studies into 6 papers. I'm not more handsome. I'm not younger. I'm not wiser. I'm just generating junk. Because then the poor student, PhD student, say, oh, about this topic, how many papers you have? If each of us, instead of 1, publish 6 papers, and there are 1,000 scientists, then the Google search of my poor PhD student is not going to be 1,000 papers. It's going to be 6,000 papers. And if they don't know the system, they're just going to get depressed. So if ranking is based on those kind of tricks, it's not a measurement. So, getting to the discussion we're having about reviewers, why reviewers do it, why it takes so long. It takes so long because we are in a system which is based on journals. This is not the only thing, but talking of publications, this based on journals that are usually profitable. Because historically, the journals, they were born as a way to disseminate science. And if you think of pre-internet era, when you had to send the paper by kind of mail, and then the correction will be on the paper. And then they go, of course, somebody's doing the job, they need to be paid. But then they came out with this smart idea, we don't want to be paid by the authors, we want to be paid by the library. So we're going to sell the subscription to the library. And the price used to be decent. But then in the past years, they saw that the library were buying anyway. So the price of paper has gone up, 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 even if the cost of the paper has gone down. So what happens is that the profit margin of commercial publishers, do you know what's the profit margin of Apple? That's 40%. It's exactly the same in commercial publishers. Even if commercial publishers should kind of disseminate science, their goal is to. So what happens is, with this amount of money, nobody wants to leave. Nobody wants to give you the tools to oust them. By doing this, they try to keep a monopoly. Now, a few years ago, the European Commission and a few other countries in Europe say, we're not going to sign any more deals because you are too expensive. And they opened the way to alternative forms of publication, and they also say every public funded research should be open, should be accessible. So they created this kind of the culture of APC, author processing charges. But the author processing charges are an income for the journal. And any journal that wants to make money out of it, they're going to maximize the number of ACP they get, the APC they get. So there is an inherent conflict of interest, because if you are a company, you're making money based on the number of papers you publish. So you want to publish more. If you want to publish more, you can charge more, but then it means you need to lower the threshold of quality. So what happens is, if you see there are I have it on my blog that I can share as well. I call it pay as you publish model, just like the SIM card, pay as you phone and pay as you go. The income of some large publishing groups they've increased. I mean, the number of, I was reading it 2 days ago, so I still remember. So the number of papers sent to a journal, they increased like 10 to 15 times in 6 years. I mean, to the editorial group. 10 to 15 times means like you have 10 to 15 more researchers or 10 to 15 more papers. I mean, and the profit, I mean, they used to, I mean, it was gone up 12 times. So it was like 14 million, and now it's 300 million just for one publishing group in 6 years. Now, I don't think that the world has become so smart that we are publishing so much more, we're doing much research. There is no time in the day. So there's something, I mean, figures don't lie in this case. If someone is making 20 times more than 6 years ago, there is something, they have found the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is that scientists, they are desperate to publish, and they're ready to put money into publishing, especially because national evaluation systems, they push you to publish, not even knowing what Scopus is. They say everybody needs to have a Scopus. So what I teach, which is usually, I mean, when I do my seminars in Central Asia, students no longer talk about articles. They talk about Scopus. I need to publish one Scopus. So what is one Scopus? Is one scope of ice cream? No, it's one Scopus. So do you understand what is one Scopus? Yeah, I need to one Scopus. I mean, Scopus is not a person. Scopus is a database. You cannot publish a database. Ah, okay. But they still say, yeah, but they need one Scopus. So we are shifting from the process of publishing, to results. I mean, think about yourself, being critical. Some years ago, if you're old enough, you will think, oh, I have those findings. I would like to publish them somewhere so that people are going to read them and are going to benefit from them. Now it's no longer like this. It's like, I need to publish in that journal. What can I think to publish in that journal? What data can I get? What co-authors can I get? What kind of research can I get to get into that journal and that journal and that journal? We are just collecting scopes. Like scopes, like when they in the movies, when they're collecting the heads of the people, just collect them. I need that journal, the journal to be promoted. This is not science. We are at 45. If you want to open, I didn't answer the question about the first time publishing, but directly. But I can include in the answers that to the question we're gonna get. Okay. So, I mean, the question was very broad, was about just suggestion for the first time publisher. And basically, I mean, you can see this in the book. Journals are all different. I mean, I distinguish empirical journals from theoretical journals. So empirical journals that we're more interested in kind of your empirics. But the difference, there is a big difference between an article and a chapter. That's what I start from. This is for hard science, you hardly have any chapters, but for economics or social science, you still have some chapters. A chapter could be something which is completely empirical. So you have some data, you process the data, you have some results, you share the results. Now, in this case, you don't have to do the effort of explaining what they mean for data, for theory. Because if it's a volume, probably the introduction to the volume is going to be like the theoretical engagement of the volume. And then your chapter is going to confirm or reject the thesis that you have in the volume, which means it's a light version of science because it's easier. So if you are just coming from the field work, if you have raw data, you didn't give enough time to think about your results, you can just produce the data. Say, okay, if 1 person out of 5 is using grab, 1 person out of 7, oh, thank you. But the second step in science would be like what this means for science, for theory, for social science theory, for economic theory. This is a more complex thing because you need to engage with global debates. And this takes more time and takes more effort, which is why now universities are kind of, even my university chapter doesn't count. I mean, if you publish a chapter, it's your hobby. You didn't have anything to do. So you want to publish a chapter because you want to work with this person. So if Jeff is publishing a paper, a book, and he says, Abel, you want to contribute? I will not say yes because I need it for my career. I will say yes because you're a nice person. I like to work. I like working with you. So I want to keep contacts with you because I know that in the future we're going to do things. That's the only message for me. Other universities are a bit more kind of inclusive, or they're a bit less exclusive, and they say, yeah, a chapter is okay. But articles are becoming the unit, the unit measure of science. In that case, you need to find a journal, and you need to find a kind of balance between your empirics and your theory. Some journals, they are like, we like your empirics, just tell us a bit about theory and it's enough. Some other journals is like, we don't care about your empirics, we just care about your theory. So just give me the results. Maybe you can put some methods in annex, but we need to know what's meaning for theory, for the theory you're engaging with. This is your homework. Identify journals and understand what they clearly explain this. And you can also read other articles and see what's the kind of percentage of empirics versus theory in those journals, in those articles. If you do this, again, it's copying. It's about understanding the structure of an article. You say, okay, those journals, they really care about empirics. I really have very good empirics, but I don't really want to engage with theory. Okay, let me try there. Usually those are also area studies journals. So if you have the Journal of the Philippines, Journal of Southeast Asia, the Journal of Asia, they're more interested in empirical results because people from Asia are going to read them and can compare. Whereas if you go to a journal which is political sociology, economics, and so on, they're more interested in economic theory, sociological theory, more than the Philippines. So for the Journal of the Philippines, you don't have to explain why you study in the Philippines, because for the Journal of the Philippines is the most beautiful country in the world. But if you go to the Journal of Sociology, you have to explain why on earth Philippines can explain something to sociology. In that case, you need to engage with the debate, which is higher. So the first step, again, it's your homework. It's not about writing. It's about, it's writing because you have some empirics, but it's understanding where your writing could be accepted and where your writing could be useful. Of course, you're not going to go to the Journal of Latin American Studies because you have nothing to say, unless one of your co-authors is from Chile and you want to do a comparison. In that case, it might make sense. So the first thing is to publish, is to understand where your manuscript, where your research could be welcomed, keeping in mind that journals are kind of overwhelmed. Now, there is a database of journals, which is the Scopus database. There is a free version on simago.com, and there is a paying version through the library where you can see all the journals from a certain discipline. Again, in the drawer of every experienced researcher, there is a number of journals that you have identified through kind of manual search. Of course, you can do AI, you can do whatever you want. Call me traditional, but I would prefer to look at them and to understand what's going on. Also, because you can see the editors. Maybe one of the editorial board is a former supervisor of yours, and you can ask him for advice. And say, well, what about my paper? Do you think in my paper, my research could fit there? And you can get some feedback. But there is a database of journals, which is over 1,000 per discipline, that you can look at, and you have different quartiles. And you can choose a quartile. Of course, if you go to the best journal in the field, it's going to be very, very difficult to enter because everybody wants to go there. It's like going to a Michelin restaurant. Everybody wants to go there, and it's very expensive. And it's not necessarily better. It's just famous. It's just renowned. You could have a very, very small stand with a mamacita that is cooking for you. Maybe it's very, very kind of tasty, but it's not as famous as that Michelin restaurant in the other part. So maybe you will still get some very good feedback from a journal which is not famous. But then in that case, depends, is your line manager expecting you to publish in the best journal ever? And also, publishing in very good journals usually takes lots of time. So like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So if you are early career and you have no other publication, you do really want to wait 3 years before you publish your first paper. Maybe you want to go for something faster. And usually they say, the very famous strategy, the 2-speed strategies, like you publish once in a while in a very good journal, but most of the time in kind of average journals. I'm saying good and average. I'm using the quartile definition. I'm not judging the quality, because sometimes a Q2 or Q3 could be much better than a Q1 if it's managed in a way which is more competent. But what I'm saying is that at the level of for the moment, now when you apply for an ERC, you cannot show the quartile. The reviewers they don't have to take into account this, which I think is fair. But if you are starting and your university is more traditional, is more obsessed by ranking, then you need to show that you can publish in some top journals.
You have any question, Mir? No.
I'm sorry. Um, our university some time ago decided that it wants to compete in the rankings. We used to be a small teaching university, and it seems like the chosen strategy, as communicated to us faculty members, is that we should be more like into interdisciplinary research. They encourage us to publish in interdisciplinary journals. So I want to get your take on that particular strategy, because it seems like the impression is it's easier to publish in interdisciplinary journals. What's your opinion on that?
I don't think that. I think it's a bit uh, generalized, easier. I mean, we need to define, as scientists, we need to define easier, and we need to define interdisciplinary journals. Interdisciplinarity is tricky because if you publish a paper, if you want to do, even when you apply for funding, if you do anything which is mixing biology and anthropology, who's going to be the reviewers? And even if you identify a reviewer in biology and one in anthropology, the one in biology will have no clue what you're writing in anthropology, and the one in anthropology will have no clue what you're doing in biology. So each of them will say, "Oh, that's not a good paper." I mean, there is a risk. Even I see this even when you go quantitative and then the paper is qualitative and then people are scared and they don't go for it. So it's very tricky. What you were saying about interdisciplinary journals, I would just say it's more about area studies journal, as I was saying before. So in an area study, the Journal of Southeast Asia, they will be more interested in your results than in theory, because for them, Southeast Asia is the most beautiful part of the world. Whereas if you go into political sociology, they will say, okay, what's the meaning of political sociology? And you need to engage with major debates in political sociology. And major debates in political sociology are incidentally where, usually from the usual part of the world, which is the US, UK, sometimes Australia, maybe South Africa, some German, some random Netherlands. That's what you have to do. And if they know anything about the Philippines, you still have to engage with those things. So area studies journals, they become kind of the place where you can find shelter if you want to concentrate on your own research and your things, but it's not easier. They're just, maybe they're just more accessible. They're just more open to things that are more local, and they will not ask you, because if you write it, I mean, my advice to the, at least to the students at least, is like, when you write into a journal which is a global journal, you need to explain what the Philippine can say to other people. I mean, you have a reader from Brazil, you have a reader from Germany, and you have to explain, they don't care about the Philippines. So you need to explain through theory what this can tell to the case in Germany, what the case was in Brazil. Whereas in Journal of the Philippine Studies or Journal of Southeast Asia Studies, they will not ask you what's the meaning for my country, because my country is also your country. My region is also your region. So of course we are interested.
Uh, can you check whether anybody in the Zoom room? No question yet? Okay. Maybe we'll check. Oh, there's a question there.
So the question reads, I am an early career researcher who just came out of PhD. I continue my research, but I publish a lot less than salami slicers per year. What can we do for our work to get noticed and get past the salami slicers?
When you go to a conference, so you can look at my Scopus, I mean my AH index and whatever. But whenever I go to a conference, what's the first thing you notice when somebody's presenting? Would you check their Scopus, or would you check if the person is nice, if the person speaks clearly, if the person says things in a logical way? So whenever even if formally you can have people with many papers, when you go to a conference, when you listen to the presentation, the most important thing here is not how many papers they have, but is how much this person speaks to you. So to be noticed at a conference, you simply need to perform. Of course, it's going to be difficult to perform if nobody comes to your panel. But at the same time, you could also pair up with people that are a bit more senior than you. That's what everybody does, not just academics. I mean, if you are building cars, no, not cars. If you are a kind of crafter, okay, you're making your own kind of paintings. The only way to get noticed is to befriend somebody who is more famous than you, and then the person is going to say, "Yeah, by the way, this is my friend. His painting are not as good as mine, but his paintings have kind of some meaning," and then people start noticing them. So in my kind of early stage of career, I was trying to go to conferences with people that were more famous. So I would do the administrative work. I would say, "Oh, I'm organizing a panel. Do you want to be in the panel? You don't have to do anything. I'll do all the administrative work. I'll do all the things. You just pay the money and submit the paper, and then the rest is on me." And of course, those people that were more busy than I was, they'd be like, "Oh, that's a good idea." And then I would end up in panels uh, with people much more higher ranked than I was. In some other cases, it could be by chance. In some other cases, because my research was so kind of marginal, was so niche that the four students of that city, they would come to the same panel. And of course, I was the youngest one. So of course, I was going with people kind of were more senior. But I mean, I think networking is part of your research duties. I mean, making friends, making colleagues, building connections. We are craftsmen. The only way we have to kind of to advance is through other people. So all elder generation, they have a duty to train new generation. A new generation, they have a duty to link to the old generation. They can disagree, but it's a small community, and the only way it works is through connections. Which connection doesn't mean there should be barrier. I mean, I'm not encouraging barriers, but what I'm saying, I'm encouraging endorsement. If somebody who is more senior endorses you, that counts to other people. If I say, "This is my favorite student, please listen to him or to her," my colleague must say, "Okay, I'll listen because I trust Abel." So that's so you don't need to go. I mean, salami slicing is not for the visibility. Salami slicing is for the formal rankings, for the exercise, when the ministry is asking, when the line manager is asking. I mean, another example is that, I mean, in some countries, the ranking of books is very, very arbitrary. So you have some books that are very, very good, some books that are not. I mean, some publishers that are very famous and some publishers that are unfamous. They are very good and some publishers that are not. And they all give you the same amount of points on your CV. But the point is that if you go with Cambridge University Press to a conference, they will look at you and say, "Oh, good." If you go with the University of my uncle press, which is also in the same level, at the same level the other one, people will look at you and say, do you really want us to take you seriously?
Is there any other questions? Then maybe we can. Okay, so I think time's up. So on behalf of everyone here, we would like to sincerely thank our speaker, Dr. Abel Polese, for sharing their knowledge and insights with us today. So we deeply appreciate the time and effort you put into making this event a success. Okay, so just some advertisement. So don't miss out on valuable insights. Visit our website to access materials from previous seminars and stay informed on past discussions. Previous seminar videos can be found in the Ateneo de Manila University YouTube page with the playlist titled Economic Seminar Series. So including this one with the permission of Dr. Polese. So before we wrap up, a quick reminder, if you'd like to request a certificate for today's session, the link to the request form can be found in the chat box. So please make sure to complete it immediately as the form will only remain open for 2 hours after the session. So we would like to take a moment to thank our incredible support team for their hard work and dedication in making this event a success. We also extend our gratitude to our attendees and look forward to your joining more of our seminars from February to April. Your engagement and support have been invaluable, and we look forward to your continued participation. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Okay. Everyone, please open your camera.
posting this.